Distinguished guests, experts, and participants, welcome to the Equity in Global Public Science Literacy parallel meeting aligned with 2021 World Conference on Science Literacy. Let me briefly introduce myself and today's meeting agenda. My name is Jenny Guo, the Executive Deputy Secretary General of BIEA. Today, we are honored to invite 8 distinguished experts all over the world to share their experiences in promoting equity and inclusiveness in science literacy. Not only ethnic minorities should be laid special emphasis, but also gender issues, especially female and girls-related topics. Today, we have Jennifer Gidley, Adjunct Professor, Institute for Sustainable Futures, University of Technology, Sydney. She is also the president of World Future Studies Federation from 2009 to 2017 and Forbes 50 Female Futurists to share why the 21st century needs more female scientists. Jennifer, microphone is yours.
Hello everybody, Jennifer Gidley here, and I'm speaking from Australia. I very much want to thank Jenny for the invitation to take part in this very interesting panel. She wanted me to speak as the only woman in the panel on girls and women in STEM, a rather large responsibility to be representing half of the world's population. I'm going to be speaking on 3 topics today. Firstly, equal right to education for girls. Secondly, the status of girls and women in STEM. And thirdly, why the 21st century needs female scientists. So, equal right to education for girls. The UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 states that everyone has a right to education. However, the obstacles to girls and women getting any kind of education are still enormous in many countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, as Professor Boubacar has indicated. Girls from poor rural families are most likely to be excluded from school. Many are already working as child labourers. Some are young mothers. In 2019, UNESCO told us that 132 million girls were out of school. Only 1% of the world's poorest girls will complete education. The greatest obstacle is the mindset of parents in some cultures. Parents who are not educated themselves often believe that girls should stay at home to help on the farm or business while boys go to school. This image is from UNESCO video in 2018 called "Mama Says School is Not for Girls." A great obstacle is gender bias from an early age. According to UNESCO, little girls as young as 6 already believe that boys their age are much smarter than they are. So in 2017, there were 750 million illiterate adults globally, but 2/3 of these were women. Yet the UN SDG 5, target 5.1 tells us we need to end all forms of discrimination against women and girls everywhere. Only 35% of higher education students studying STEM subjects are women. But the UN SDG 4 goal for quality education, target 4.5, says that by 2030, we need to eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education. In summary, Part 1, equal right to education for girls. Firstly, girls have an equal right to education. Secondly, 132 million girls are out of school globally. That's a huge number. Thirdly, some cultures discourage girls' education. And fourthly, gender bias begins as early as 6. All of these things need to be addressed. And how do we address them? Let's now look at the status of girls and women in STEM. So that was the general picture in education. This is now the picture in STEM. With gender bias from as early as 6, it's not surprising that only 35% of higher education STEM students are females. But it gets worse as women graduate from the STEM workforce. Only 28% of STEM researchers are women. Furthermore, women are paid less and they have less of their research published. The proportion of women in STEM does vary across the sciences. The majority in the US anyway of women in STEM are participating in biology and chemistry. The lowest participation is in ICT and engineering and architecture. And what's interesting here is that the gender gap is highest in these highest paid STEM jobs, that is engineering and ICT. And only 3% of ICT graduates worldwide are women. So let's have a look at the background of this. 20th century context of gender in engineering. Here's a representation of British mechanical engineering in 1960. What do we see? All the mechanical engineers are men. Here's another picture from the 21st century. This is a picture of a representative group of Chinese scientific and engineering professionals from the Northwest University of Nationalities in China and the Queensland Chinese Association of Science and Engineers. This was taken in 2015. What do we see? They're still all men. The gender gap is nowhere more evident than in Silicon Valley, in the ICT hub of the world. Only 1 in 10 Silicon Valley executives are women. Only 5% of startups are female owned. Yet, when we survey girls, we find that 74% of them are interested in STEM career fields. Furthermore, only $1 for every 40 goes to female-led companies. That's only 2.5% of funding. So where does all this money go in high-tech and ICT engineering? This is a picture of the top CEOs of the top global high-tech companies. And when I read this article and saw these images, what it said was, these CEOs have one thing in common. They're all engineers. But I noticed they have two things in common. They are all engineers and they're all men. So is this the whole picture? No, it isn't. There are brilliant women in STEM, and we're going to talk about some of these in a minute. So why are they not equally represented in the professions? And why are they not found at the top of their industries? There are several reasons, and here are some facts. Firstly, historically, STEM has always been dominated by males, as we've seen. Secondly, the gender bias, especially in STEM, begins at a very early age, beginning of primary school. Thirdly, even if women get into STEM careers, they are paid less and they're not well promoted or published. So what can we do to better support girls and women in STEM professions? Firstly, we need to recognise that women's ability in STEM subjects is equal to men's. Secondly, we need to know that girls need role models and mentoring, female role models and mentoring. Thirdly, STEM women in careers need support and encouragement. Fourthly, we need to take affirmative action for girls in STEM. So here's what we need to do to encourage girls into STEM. We need to encourage young girls to be curious, creative, adventurous. We can tell young girls stories about nature, which can inspire them into science. What do we need to do with older girls to support them? We can support girls in school education to experiment with science. Working in teams with other girls helps to make science fun for girls. How do we encourage young women into STEM careers? We need to help young women in college bridge the confidence gap. Many young women who are good at STEM subjects lack confidence, so they need to be supported. And how else can we support young women? We can inspire young women at university to be daring and creative in their research. This is an image from the Afghan girls robotic team who recently escaped the Taliban in Afghanistan. So to summarise part 2, the status of girls and women in STEM, firstly, girls and women are equally interested in STEM. Secondly, females are as capable at STEM subjects as males. And yet women are underrepresented in STEM, but we can take affirmative action. So the third part of my talk, why do we need female scientists in 21st century science? Well, the 21st century is a time of grand global challenges. As some speakers have discussed, the global pandemic is with us, and we don't know for how long. We have a climate emergency. We have rapid urbanization, which creates all sorts of stresses on the planet. We have exponential technology, which dehumanizes our culture and our society. And we have ecosystem collapse, the demise of our forests and our ocean through climate change. So we need a new type of science to meet these challenges. I would argue we need a science of hope, collaboration, and higher purpose, not greed and getting rich. So what difference do women scientists make? In an article called The Eco-Gender Gap, Why is Saving the Planet Seen as Women's Work? We find that research from the mid-90s to the early thousands points to women's greater tendency to be pro-social, altruistic, and empathic. They display a stronger ethic of care, and they assume a future-focused perspective. Furthermore, from a project called Our Little Roses on poverty and education in Honduras, in Central America, we hear that women offer a priceless element of innovation. While creativity is not unique to one specific gender, we find that women in STEM can offer different approaches, outlooks, and perspectives. We also hear from the Business Insider article in 2018 that women are great managers because they build relationships, they encourage a positive team environment, and they provide employees with the opportunities to develop their own careers. So they're very oriented towards the other person, not just egocentric. And here are some young women role models for girls and young women in STEM. This young woman is focused on human-centered urbanization. She's an architect and urban designer called Zareth Pineda, and she designs concepts for what she calls territorial empathy. So this is an image from her design called Engineered Paradises, and it is set in the Middle East, and it is imagining pathways of possibility between Palestine and Israel through architecture and urban design. Very interesting. Here's another young woman role model, Amber Case. This is STEM in ICT. She's a cyborg anthropologist, and she's one of Fast Company's most influential young women in technology. She claims that the way that technology is designed today is all about creating more and more distraction and addiction. So she's developing technology, which is called calm technology, and she's written a book about it to try and turn around the addiction and distraction. Here's the Afghan girls robotic team again, and they're very much focused on higher purpose and creativity for the health crises. So unlike the Terminator-style robots of the Silicon Valley boys, these girls are building a low-cost ventilator for coronavirus patients, and they're combining an MIT design with parts from old Toyota cars, using what's there. Here's another inspirational young woman in STEM, a Chinese environmental engineer called Shuwan Charlene. She's doing STEM for clean water. She founded something called the MyH2O, Water Information Network, and this provides clean water access and data to over 1,000 villages in rural communities. Very important. Now, here are some adult role models for girls and young women in STEM. Helping to prevent ocean demise is biologist and marine scientist, the middle picture, Dr. Sylvia Earle, and she's created Mission Blue, which is hope spots to try to save the ocean from global warming and climate crisis. Secondly, we have STEM to reduce air pollution, and the second scientist here in the image is Sarah Qureshi, and she's a Pakistani aerospace engineer and pilot, and she's designed the world's first eco-friendly aircraft engines. Thirdly, another woman role model for girls and young women in STEM to treat malaria. So this woman, many of you will probably know of her, the first mainland Chinese scientist to receive a Nobel Prize for medicine, Dr. Yu Tu. And what she did was isolated the key ingredient to treat malaria using traditional Chinese medicine, using ancient texts. So to summarize, why do we need female scientists to help to transform 21st century science? Because the 21st century is a time of grand global challenges, and the old science isn't working as well as it needs to. We need a new science of hope, collaboration, and higher purpose. Research shows us that women are more caring, altruistic, and innovative. And we see that female scientists will help design very positive futures for the planet. And innovative young women in STEM will inspire other young girls to get into STEM subjects. If you're interested in any further reading on any of this, I've published several books on education and also on the future. My Oxford book, The Future, a very short introduction, includes a lot of work on the grand global futures challenges and what we need to do about it to turn them around. This book is going to be out in Mandarin very soon, which I'm very pleased about. It's already out in Arabic and Turkish. Once again, Jenny, thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very honoured to have participated in this panel.